I want to thank our proud sponsor, BetUS. Go ahead, check them out at betus.com. Good evening, good afternoon. Welcome back to High Top Sports Oregon. I got Derek the Duck. I'm Cody the Professor, and we're talking transfer portal 2025 class, kind of ending that up. As you guys have been watching along with us, I have been dropping some transfer portal um, highlights of players, film breakdown. It's kind of hard because not all these guys have tape on them. Um, some of these schools just don't offer it. You got a couple kids like out of Texas State and stuff like that. So, but let's go ahead. Let's kind of break down this class. Let's go ahead and get to the guy I'm super excited about is Mr. Hughes, the Tulane running back. Definitely an NFL style back. Um, Thinking Jordan James going to the draft, right? Correct. And
Yes, he
so,
declared.
no 10th year eligibility type nonsense going on.
Still waiting on that. Yeah, we don't know what's going on with Noah quite yet. So
So let's go ahead break him down real fast. This kid's an NFL style back. He does everything right. He can run in between the tackles, bounce outside. I think he actually might run in between the tackles a little bit better than what Jordan James did. A part of the running game that you guys desperately need to start plugging in that Big Ten play.
yeah, he's definitely like one of those one jump cut and go type of players. I would kind of compare him to how Jordan James started to run toward the end of the year.
Yeah,
If you remember, toward the beginning of the year, we saw him bounce outside the tackles a ton, try to make things happen in space. That way, as the year kind of progressed, took things inside the tackles. And I think that's kind of the runner Makai Hughes is going to be for Oregon as well. He's obviously going to fill a pretty big hole with James leaving for the NFL. Noah Whittington, we don't know exactly what's going to happen with him yet. But then behind him, there's a bunch of unproven backs in that room. The Jay Harrises, the Jaden Lamars, the Dink Riggses of the world. So yeah, this is a position of need in an immediate sense for the 25 season, and I'm really excited to see him on field. And I know one thing we were just talking about too is it really helped that this is Naheem Offord's brother. Getting him on campus at Oregon, and ultimately, just deciding to stick with the Ducks after taking his visit there. So he's definitely a player I'm excited to see. He's going to be one of these guys where once the spring game hits, this will be a player that I definitely have eyes on.
for sure. And then let's go ahead and address the offensive line. Definitely beefing that up with uh, uh, the kid out of USC, Emmanuel. A no star in high school, 4-star in the transfer portal. That's what you really like to see. Isaiah Ward coming from Nevada, 3-star in high school, 4-star in the transfer portal. Love seeing that. And then another kid is Alex Harkey from Texas State, 3-star in high school, 4-star coming out. So you're getting some production um, of guys, and it's kind of across the board. You can kind of see of guys, maybe a no star, maybe a 3-star in high school coming into the transfer portal. You didn't take very many kids that were non-productive.
hmm I know, coming into this transfer portal cycle, one position in need we kind of talked about was that offensive line, just because they were losing so much production to the draft. Um, this year. And I think Dan did an excellent job with Emmanuel Pregnon, obviously, coming out of USC, which is always nice taking someone out of little brother's pocket. But this is a player who's been highly successful at the two other stops he's made, for starting at Wyoming and then ultimately landing at USC before, finishing out his career at Oregon here this coming year. He's one I'm really excited for, the number two interior offensive lineman in this year's portal cycle. So, it's a pretty immediate impact, fills a massive position in need. And if anything else, just kind of stabilizes that room for next year if you do have the talent in house to, do what you need to do. Same thing with Isaiah World. At one point, was the number one offensive tackle in this portal cycle, according to 24/7. Someone who is highly productive at Nevada. Now, mind you, the Mountain West, it is a very different competitive nature. However, he did exactly what we would expect a player of this caliber to do at that level. Um, he was a player who had multiple big time offers once he hit the portal, and ultimately ended up deciding to sign with the Ducks. And I think this is going to be another player who we're going to see playing every Saturday. I think he'll be a starter on this offensive line once all is said and done going into the fall. And then Alex Harkey, I think this is kind of an underrated one, in my opinion. He's someone who I don't expect to start next year. I think he's going to be kind of a depth piece similar to like Nishad Strother of the last couple of years after they took him out of East Carolina. Um, Alex Harkey, he was highly productive at Texas State. Once again, and it's just one of those issues where the level of competitiveness does not directly translate, especially into the Big Ten. So I think at a minimum he'll be a nice depth piece, which we all know offensive linemen, they get banged up throughout the year. We saw it all year with Oregon this year, so it's nice to have someone with some experience there as well. I think Dan did one hell of a job with that offensive line.
For sure. And the great thing, like I said, you talk about Manuel moving a couple stops. I don't mind that if they're constantly upgrades. Like you start out at like a Sun Belt school, and then you go to a little bit bigger school, and then you find yourself in the Big Ten or SEC. I don't mind that. The lateral moves is kind of concerning. Let's go ahead and get into that guy. Obviously, um, Malik Benson. Kind of. Listen, didn't have a great quarterback. We do have to address it. 4-star in high school, 3-star coming into the transfer portal, 6'1", 195. Just couldn't figure out, couldn't put it together at FSU. Quarterback DJU, and then Croman Hook, and it's not what you want as a pass catcher. What Florida State put on the field last year, and so he decides to pack it up and go to a absolutely loaded wide receiver room and try. He's going to try to make a spot, crack the starting lineup.
Yeah, see, this is the one player in this year's transfer cycle that, there was a lot of smoke toward Oregon very early on once he entered the portal. And it was kind of one of those things where I sat back and I'm like, but why?
Yeah,
it doesn't make a ton of sense just based off what's coming back, what they already have in the room. Um, so I think it's one of those low risk, high reward type of things. If anything else, you kind of stabilize that wide receiver room with people who do have a little more experience,
yeah,
albeit there is a ton of talent in that wide receiver room. There is also a ton of unproven talent at that point. And that's not to say Malik Benson's come out here and, shown the college football world that he's to be reckoned with. But what it does do is it provides a little more competitive nature into that room, creates, brings a veteran presence. The couple things that just concerned me. I don't even know if I would say concerned because Dan has never brought in a failure of a transfer portal target. So it's, if he's bringing him in, he probably has a plan for him. But, he's had some character issues. Obviously started at the JUCO level, spent some time at Bama, spent some time at FSU. At both Bama and FSU, didn't really pan out the way he thought his career was going to go. Was highly productive at the JUCO level, was the number one JUCO wide receiver coming out the year he decided to come back, but that obviously did not translate at FSU. And like you mentioned, though, there was quarterback turmoil and the offensive line was trash, and they didn't know what they were doing down in Tallahassee.
yeah.
And I don't think that helped. But at the same time, just watching his tape when he's on the field, he doesn't strike me as that just the guy who's going to make a difference in the game. I could be wrong, but
I,
that's just what I'm seeing.
I could see it. I could see it in like Florida's perspective, where they took Studevant from UCLA, the
Mhm.
real tall kid, because we needed a
Yep.
big time, big possession guy. So we go get a guy that's 6'3".
Hmm.
I mean, he's 6'1", 195. He's run the mill of what you got. So it's just kind of a head scratcher there. But we'll let Dan cook on this one. Let's go ahead and get to the other one that possibly could be an issue. I don't want to say an issue. I don't want to say the kid's bad or broken goods, but Bear Alexander, um, a highly sought after name during the first transfer portal cycle. Not sure as much as the second transfer portal cycle.
Hmm.
Former Georgia defensive lineman. He was a freshman. Started. Was an interior player there. Not didn't fill out. I think like they wanted him to. I think they wanted him to be like 345. Kind of bring that Carter back of what they used to have like within Carter. Um, and he wasn't it. Goes to USC to Grinch in the Speed D. I don't know why. What it was just bad. And then now he's at Oregon.
Yeah, it's when he came out of Georgia the first time, hit the transfer portal. Oregon was highly tied to him. I know Dan tried to get him on campus before he ultimately signed with USC. So it's like once his name was in the portal again, Oregon was a very early name, to watch for obvious reasons. They wanted him in that system. Um, Obviously he was a five-star guy coming out of high school, very, like you said, very highly sought after. Evaluators thought that this could be, an early first round pick if everything pans out the way it needs to be in his career, and it just hasn't happened that way. He was all right at Georgia. At USC, he showed flashes. USC fans will be quick to point out the few reps each game where, he's not looking so great. Uh, but at a minimum, what he does bring is he brings a ton of potential. He brings that prototypical size and speed you need coming into his last year of eligibility. So, he needs to be able to produce to get that draft stock up. So, he's not coming to Eugene to, mess around. I'm assuming that he's there to, kind of get after it and raise that draft stock like we want to see. But it fills a position of need once again, losing Jamari Caldwell, losing Derek Harmon on the interior, losing Amari Washington, who, didn't get many reps, but we kind of expected to see him get some reps this coming year.
Yeah.
With all that, I think it really addresses that. At a minimum, it kind of brings that competitive juice back to that interior defensive lineman room. And it brings someone who is kind of a low risk, high reward thing. I mean, you bring him in, kind of like you said, he wasn't as highly sought after coming into this year's cycle. It doesn't garner quite the NIL that he once did to get him onto campus. And, if everything blooms like he does, like I said, he has that size and speed to be effective like we want to see him be. It's just a matter of him putting it all together in a system that fits right for him. And hopefully, Tasha's D is that thing for him.
Yeah, he definitely flashes with talent. There's the talent is at the world. And the separation of him leaving Georgia was kind of odd. It definitely wasn't a force out. They wanted to keep the kid. He just wanted, I think, got wrapped up in NIL, and there might have been a little bit of tampering. I don't know, but the fit for him to go to Grinch, which Grinch ended up getting fired mid-season, was always an odd one. I just you could just tell, like, definitely this is a money transaction. It felt like, right?
Yeah, it's the whole system thing for me. It's, obviously defense, you can run a ton of different systems, ton of different schematics with it. Grinch's defense, like you said, it was more of like a speed D, and that kind of translated to that interior defensive line in which he is not that type of player, and
No.
that's not speaking ill on him. It's just that's not the system that he's going to thrive in the most. And I think that's kind of why we saw flashes of it. We would see that sheer talent come out and kind of overcome that, but there also, he was put into a system where, in a sense, he was built for failure. And, you could argue this year, here, obviously, has been canned, new DC in there. Things started to change a little bit, but as we saw once again, the USC's defense, they didn't quite get it figured out yet. And I think, it's probably a product of that transition in-house of USC trying to get their schematics figured out. And then, Bear being in SoCal, potential character issues. Who knows what was really going on at USC? It didn't look like they had the most focused roster in the world over the last two seasons. So hard to tell.
Let's go ahead and talk about the jewel of the class. I think personally, on the defensive side of the ball, 6', 207, brings thunder when he hits. Dylan Dynaman. I mean, this kid out of Purdue is absolutely electric.
Yeah, a former Big Ten, freshman of the year, made an immediate impact at Purdue. There has been productive every game he's been on the field. And when he hit the transfer portal, obviously he is the number one safety in this year's portal class. He garnered a ton of interest very early on. Oregon and Ohio State were two of the names to watch, which, for obvious reasons, wants to stick in the Big Ten. Before ultimately signing with Dan and the Ducks. But he's a guy who's going to make an immediate impact. We will see him on the field to start every game. There's still some turmoil in that safety room. They lose Tysheem Johnson, Kobe Savage. We're still kind of waiting to see what happens with him there. He's a guy who is very much needed. I think he's going to be an immediate leader on that defense, someone who makes an immediate impact. And the thing I'm most excited for is a safety who truly thrives in coverage. He brings, like you said, he brings absolute thunder when he cracks, but the man is phenomenal in coverage, which is something that Oregon desperately needs. It was made very evident in the Ohio State game in the Rose Bowl,
Yeah.
you know, where they're lacking some depth and experience and just happen to be in the safety room. And obviously, the first person Dan signed in this year's transfer cycle was the number one overall safety. So, very excited to get him on. Dan did a phenomenal job, with his recruiting pitch, obviously. Sure, there were a couple funds that were thrown around, sway him to Eugene, but here we are.
Yeah, you talk about you want a NFL comp to this kid Cooper DeJean. That's exactly who he plays like. That's absolutely balling out for the Eagles right now. Listen, it's tough for a guy like us in that DB room. All right, listen, but when you got one, you got a dog back there.
And he is. He very much is. Like I said, it's not even. He brings absolute thunder when he hits. The dude is loves physicality. That's the definition of a lunch pail kid right there, who
Yeah,
just puts it on every Saturday. But like I said, that coverage element that he's going to bring to this defense over the top is going to be much needed.
for sure. All right, guys. Transfer portal talk. I think you got some good ones. I think you filled some holes for sure. We're gonna go ahead wrap it up. But first, I want to thank our proud sponsor, BetUS, as always. Let's go ahead do a little bit of gambling real fast. Right now at betus.com, use code YouTube150, get 150% back on your first deposit, 125 on your second deposit, up to $2,000. That's 150% back on your first deposit, 125 on your second, third deposit, up to $2,000. Ohio State, Notre Dame. Give me the points for Notre Dame, money line Ohio State over a 45. Derek, what do you think?
What do we got for a spread, Prof?
We
What's our
got
number looking like?
-9 for Ohio State, so that'd give Notre Dame plus 9 points. I don't know. It's gonna be. Can they take away Jeremiah Smith is the question.
I'm gonna be honest. I'm still leading Ohio State points. I really, really, it feels like it's in the stars to happen. It really feels like Ohio State started clicking at the right time. That Michigan game at the end of the year kind of shook them to their core. It felt like, and then obviously coming in, rolling through Tennessee, absolutely dismantling Oregon. Didn't really struggle all that mightily with Texas at any. So I feel good about Ohio State, Notre Dame. They're playing well. Defense looks sound. Offense is moving the ball again. Riley Leonard's starting to look a little more comfortable in the system toward as the year progressed. Boy, it's just I think Ohio State's got too much. I really think they are too sound offensively, defensively. Um, for Notre Dame, I think it will probably be a close game for the majority of it, but I could see it being a 10-point game as the fourth quarter trails on, or a 14-point game. Um, to be real honest with you, I could even see a blowout happening. So we'll see. Give me the Ohio State points. Give me the over. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored, at least from Ohio State in this game. um, but we'll see. I wouldn't mind seeing an upset, but you know that's why they play the game.
For sure. All right, guys, we're gonna go ahead leave you at this. There will be another video drop, and we are gonna talk about the 2026 couple 5 stars or all of them. I guess I don't know. Whatever Dan wants, Dan gets. We are going to talk about that in the next video. Go ahead, look out for that. Like and subscribe as always. I am Cody the Professor. That's Derek the Duck, and we'll see you later. I want to thank our proud sponsor, BetUS. Go ahead, check them out at betus.com.